Morning again. Welcome to our first East Anglia BCO event of the year. My name is Mike Ayton. I'm from Juniper Real Estate and I'm the chair of the East Anglia region. And those of you who've attended our events before will know how the process works. We kick off this year with a tour of the British Sugar's new headquarters in Peterborough, and we find out why it won the BCO Regional Midlands and East Anglia Award for the best corporate workplace, and that took place at the back end of last year. There were 7 or 8 categories or 7 or 8 entries for this particular award, so no mean feat, given that the British Sugar building was competing against some of the top developments in Birmingham and the rest of the West Midlands. The national BCO programme, as you know, is focused mainly on research-led webinars, and they're continuing. There's one next week, which I'll mention shortly. They're all obviously worth following for their technical excellence, but at our regional level, we're trying to focus on building tours. That's really what we did best in the sort of the pre-COVID time. And they give a better, they give a broader balance of what the BCO is about. So that's what we're trying to do. But they do take, they take a lot of time, considerable time and effort to pull together. And I'm therefore very grateful to Peter Watson at British Sugar and to Richard Fisher at CPMG, the architects for the scheme, plus the rest of the team for today's presentation. It does take a lot of effort. The British Sugar headquarters goes forward to the national awards, the date for which will be announced in due course. We were hoping that it was going to be within the next month or two, but as you can probably imagine, the judges have the challenging task of trying to re-inspect some of the properties, also trying to meet up to critique the various entries that have come in, and all in the midst of the current lockdowns. So do bear with us on that. And watch this space for a new date. And of course, we wish the British Sugar team well in the national awards. Just before we hand over to them, one BCO event that I can specifically direct you to is the launch of our Midlands and East Anglia mentoring programme. That will be a Zoom event, and it takes place next week on the 28th of January at 4:30 p.m. We have 15 mentors lined up from the region, and they cover the whole range of property disciplines. So really all we need now is a whole bunch of next gen members who would like the opportunity to be mentored, or indeed just tune into the event next week to see to find out a bit more about the programme. At the moment, all those mentoring meetings will be virtual. So the question of finding a member who might be local, a mentor who might be local to your region, is somewhat academic, and actually probably the way it's arranged at the moment means that there's probably more choice in finding someone who might, the sort of skill sets that you as a next gen member might want. So I think in this current climate of self-isolation, this mentoring program, I think it is a really valuable initiative. So if you are a next gen member listening in this morning, or you have next gen guys and girls in your teams, then please do give this some thought and do spread the word amongst your peer groups. So that was that, just on that bit of BCO work. So back to this morning, the British Sugar team, they're waiting patiently, and I'm delighted to welcome Peter Watson. I'm going to welcome him to his own building, actually. So I'll leave him to introduce the team. There should be time for some questions and answers at the end. So do use the Q&A button that will be on your screen, and I'll pick those up again after the tour. So I think without further ado, over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Mike. This feels like a slightly odd occasion because I haven't been in the building for about 3 months, but hopefully we will try and take you on a little bit of a journey as from why we set out and wanted to change from our old offices all the way through to what it's really delivered in the end. But by way of introduction, I'm Peter. I'm the projects director for British Sugar. You'll hear from Richard, Ashley and Teresa as well. And what we'll try and share with you is more about a team rather than just British Sugar. So whilst it is our building technically, there's a whole contribution from everybody across that. And you'll hear from the architects, the interior designers, and also the M&E designers as well. So hopefully in the course of the next 35 minutes, we'll share with you some of our insights and the building itself. Okay, thank you for that. So by way of introduction, this slide gives you a bit of a picture for where we've come from, and we'll try and set out some of the design brief as well. But we are a multinational business. We've got more than 25 sugar factories around the world in 9 different countries. You'll know us as Silver Spoon. That's what the UK retail offering is. We're not shy from doing our own projects. So we spend around about £150 million a year on projects. We generally don't do too many offices, and we recognized early on that we needed to change. So our office was out of date. It's a 70s building. I'm not sure who thought brown walls and blue carpets went together, but that's what we had. It was quite a large space, but actually felt like it had very little room. It was an old design, pretty segmented, so not a huge amount of common space. It was quite an expensive operating cost with a high environmental input, and that footprint really was something we wanted to try and reduce significantly. It actually holds 5 businesses, of which 3 of them are international businesses. We recognized that with the changing times, we had to change technology, and we wanted to collaborate across those businesses. As you can see from some of the pictures, there's not a lot of common space where we could collaborate. And the final sort of nail in the coffin really was every time we brought people in, we found ourselves giving excuses for the building and apologizing for the way it was. There's definitely a sense of a lack of pride in the workplace of old, and that's changed immeasurably to what we've really got today. So hopefully we can give you a little flavor for what the change we were looking for was. And the brief and the rationale, we wanted to really develop a new culture and to facilitate organizational change across our 3 international businesses, but the wider 5 businesses as well. We wanted to be open and transparent and create a light and airy place where people communicated. We wanted it to be the heartbeat of our business. So something we were really proud of and bringing people together where they'd want to stay, where they'd have activities in the morning and in the evening we could use. We'd have open events where the business could use the building to its fullest extent. And because we were an international business, we recognized we wanted to be definitely connective and agile. We wanted to adopt modern practices, everything from meeting room, better etiquette through to Teams events, international video calls, but putting a mix of meeting rooms, but then common space where we congregate and actually connect together. And we're pretty proud of what we've actually achieved in that front as well. There were a few more elements. We recognize this privacy and teamwork. There's a balance here. We wanted meeting spaces, but we wanted collaboration spaces. So that was always an interesting dilemma. We wanted to try and improve communication. Just the simple conversations. We didn't want lots and lots of meetings booked in the diaries. We wanted to make an atmosphere where you could grab 5 minutes with a colleague and talk about, over a coffee, what you were doing both at the weekend, but in work as well. Our old building was fairly dark, so we wanted something that was really natural and used sustainable design. And you'll hear some of that from the likes of Ashley when we talk about some of our M&E choices we had. And probably the one that we forget about, but we did want flexibility, but importantly, we wanted to be cost effective. So we had a 7-acre site in the middle of Peterborough. We recognized we had to leave and develop, so we developed that. We wanted it to be lower cost and significantly more sustainable, but importantly, and I was the projects director on this, we wanted to have a financial return over a 10-year period. We wanted to be cash neutral after 10 years, the net of the savings and the investment we had. And I'm pleased to say that that's absolutely on track to achieve that. Okay, and the last one for me, some of the principles we really sort of gave the challenge to the team for. We've got these 5 businesses under one roof. They're very different businesses, they're autonomous, they have different working styles, but we wanted to recognise that we wanted them to collaborate together and to get people talking. And that was a real crux of what the building design we felt we could get and deliver on. You'll hear from the team again about low energy, adopting modern technology to try and be efficient and effective. Lots of daylight. We didn't want it to feel like the old building. We wanted to enjoy the landscape that we'd invested in. And we bought a 4.5 acre plot in just on the outskirts of Peterborough, and trying to ensure that we got the right environment both externally and internally, and bringing fresh air into our building was something that we were really keen to develop. And the last thing I think is we're a fairly traditional business. Our culture has been brought up over the years. We're an engineering-led business, but we recognise that we wanted a variety of work styles. We wanted to change the way we worked, both in and outside of the building, and ultimately the culture of our business. And that's not an easy task. That's probably the hardest project we've ever done. Trying to change a culture through a building was something we recognised that we wanted, but really didn't know how to deliver, which is probably a good time for me to introduce Richard, who led the charge as our architects on taking some of these challenges and trying to bring them to life for us. Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so we're in developing the brief with Peter and his colleagues at British Sugar. We go into clear appreciation of all the things that Peter's been talking to you about. And I think in the most sort of general level, it was a matter of wanting to invest in their people and to use, as Peter was just saying, the project as a vehicle for cultural change in the business and to embrace new technologies and to be more sustainable. And those were the tasks we took on. And some of the design principles that were associated with that were actually used to inform our choice of sites. So yes, we looked at several sites along the way. And those principles were that it should have good views as possible. It should have access to lots of fresh air, to daylight, and to enjoyable outside space in the sense of space you could actually use rather than simply look at. So we looked at several sites on the south side of Peterborough, as you can see identified here. And we settled on Signet Park because it best met these requirements. It had great views to the lake that's there to the east. It was a relatively quiet setting, which is suitable for a building with lots of opening windows and big sliding doors, which is what we had in mind. And it had a mature green backdrop that you can see in that slide on the image in front of you there, which we could enhance to create attractive green spaces outside and walks around the site and also beyond to the lake on the other side of the road. And one of the other, if we move to the next slide, actually, one of the other things we liked about this site, as you can see in the plan that's there on the screen, was the Highway Authority allowed us the opportunity to create our own new access onto the A15, meaning that the building would be like, the site would be like our own little world, rather than coming through the business park past everybody else. You could actually come straight to where you wanted to be, which was nice. So in developing our ideas for the actual site, we quickly settled upon the square form with an atrium in the middle that you see on the plan in front of you. The atrium would be a unifying element that connected the floors, the ground and the upper floors. And we decided quite early on to dedicate the ground floor to social and collaborative spaces. So no workstations at all. We focused all the workstations and some collaborative space on the upper floors. And that in turn led us to think about the aesthetic of the building and how we express that externally. We also chose to site the building on a slightly raised position with its rear protected by the tree belt, as you can see on the plan, in a slightly sort of biophilic way, if you follow that. We had room, as you can see on the plan, for a future phase to the west, and which we have planning for, but which is yet to be built. And we used the spaces between the building and the tree belt where they were ideal. So we used them for creating usable external landscaped areas that people could flow in and out of the building and use. as you'll appreciate, in any office building, control of the internal environment is hugely important. We wanted a highly glazed building, so the views out and the daylighting that our client wanted. But we knew it had 3 facades that would be greatly affected by the sun, as you can see in the sun path diagram. So we made the choice to employ external solar tracking glass louvres as a means of controlling the daylight, the solar gain and the glare. And this meant that we didn't need internal blinds. These louvres also created the building aesthetic to a very large extent. They clad the 2 upper floors where the workstations are focused. They move with the sun, so sometimes they're at 90 degrees to the building, sometimes they are fully closed. And of course they open at night time because there is no sun then. So you have a building where the appearance of the building is changing throughout the day. So that's enough on the site. I think I'll hand over to Teresa now to talk in detail about the interiors.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone. So I'll talk you through the whole development of the design for the interior of the building and how we worked alongside British Sugar and the team. So we understood, following the brief that Peter described earlier in the presentation, we understood right away that it was going to be pretty much a people-focused approach, and with a very important aspect of focusing also on the work culture. So we conducted a very big engagement session. We ran questionnaires, we had interviews across all sectors of the business. We conducted surveys. We also took the client to other project visits, so they could kind of almost pick and choose what would work for them and what they would like to change and implement in this transition. Because it was not just a transition from an old building to a new building. It was, as Peter said, it was a big cultural change that was going to be put in place. And then, of course, we considered 2 other very big aspects. That was the well-being and the fact that the client wanted sustainable solutions to run throughout the project. So on this schematics that you see here, the top one reflects the ground floor. We have 3 floors in the building, ground, first and second floor. And one thing that we wanted very early on, and we were able to do, was to remove, as Richard said as well, any kind of desk stations from the ground floor. So the ground floor would be dedicated to everyone, to staff members and visitors. So we wanted to have a big brand impact. As soon as you arrive, you understand you are in British Sugar headquarters. And following that, something that we thought was quite essential to the building was for it to have a core, to have almost like a beating heart. That would be set at the ground floor, but we also wanted that to span the whole height of the building and across all floors. From that central area, we then started to look at how we could provide facilities that the previous building didn't have and were essential for British Sugar. So areas to meet, to focus, and above all, areas where you could have social interaction as well. If you look at the bottom schematics, then this reflects the work floor, so the first and the second floor. And again, you see that heart still there because we did want that to transmit across everyone and all businesses. And then we still wanted around that area to provide team and collaborative areas which were in lack in the previous building. We still wanted to have an area to socialize. But then in this one, you see that the focus area, so that your traditional setup of the desking area, start to take up a bit more space. If we go on to the next slide. Thank you. So here you can see how that strategy would work rather than in plan. You can see it in a vertical manner, and you see how that translates from the center of the building being the energetic place, the buzz, and then towards the periphery, you start to have quiet areas, focused work. And then, as Richard also mentioned, there was the provision for an outdoor space to link the beautiful site with the interior and make it all feel as one. So then this design progressed onto the next slide, please. And you see that these schematic bubbles started to be more specific. And then central to the page, you have the ground floor plan. And this is pretty much what we delivered. So you have an arrival experience with a reception, a small waiting area. And from there, you go straight into the heart of the building, where we felt the best thing to place there was a cafe to bring everyone together. It becomes an arrival point for members of the staff where they can congregate and they can start their day. They can also have breaks throughout the day. And also from the visitor perspective, you are welcomed into the core of British Sugar, and you start to be immersed in British Sugar as a company. Towards the bottom of the plan, then the cafe flows into the restaurant area. From there, you also have the outside space. And a small detail that might not be legible in this plan, but I thought it would be good to highlight, is between the restaurant and the cafe, you have a small shop. British Sugar manufactures several products that then retail, and they had a shop in the previous building, and that's something that we wanted to bring along, and we thought, what a wonderful way to showcase those products and make them accessible to staff and visitors. Towards the top of the plan, then we provided a meeting suite with several different sized meeting rooms. And on the top right corner, you'll see a bigger space. So it was a multifunctional space. And this would house a potential for conferences, for events, announcements, but also something that it's becoming more and more important when designing workspace. That is a space where people can go and do other types of activities, like a yoga class or a dance class, and that can integrate their daily routine. And again, it starts to link into that well-being that was essential on the brief part. On to the next slide, please. So here, I think it's really interesting to look back on the left to what was the initial vision for this core of the building. And then on the right, you have what was delivered. And I do think it was not that far off. And this is, I think, one of my favorite pictures of the project. And also to highlight, you have a fantastic staircase that spans from the ground all the way to the second floor. This was designed by CPMG in collaboration with us, so everything would integrate within the same design and ethos. And I think the staircase is quite important because it is the physical presence of that connection link that gathers everyone, as Peter said. So it's 5 businesses under one roof, connected by an atrium and the staircase that brings them all together. And we can go now onto the work floors. So here, this is a plan for the first floor. It represents first and second floor because the strategy was pretty much the same for these work floors. So you can see central, you have the atrium and the staircase, and these provide you an arrival to a surrounding area that is what we called the team areas, the collaboration areas. And this was achieved by providing different types of furniture that could bring people in an informal meeting or a quick catch up. There was also soft seating, and we provided what we generically called alternative work positions that would be completely kitted with technology. So if someone comes into the building that works for British Sugar but does not have a permanent base such as a desk in the building, they still have a sense of belonging, and they can touch down in these areas, pull their laptop and work within their teams. From this central area that has a bit more buzz and energy, then you start to move into the periphery of the building, into the open plan setup, more traditional one with the desks, different configurations. We provided storage facilities as well. And then here, the desks going into the periphery felt quite right because it becomes more quiet, more focused, and then you benefit from all the daylight and the landscape views, which are conducive of a great work environment. Like any business, British Sugar also had requirements for some private meetings. So we provided meeting rooms dotted around the space. We also provided some smaller rooms, quiet rooms, phone booths, where people can go and take a private phone call or have a one-on-one. And then facilities as copy points and tea points, we've made a decision alongside with the client to centralize them. And this again gives you an opportunity to lift your head up, step away from the desk, circulate around the floor, and also promotes impromptu encounters that generate conversations, ideas. So it was all about movement and bringing people together. And that's, I think, that's what we've tried to deliver with this choice of furniture and layout. We can go into the next slide, please. So again, just a little glimpse of what was the vision. This was the sketch for the T-point, and then you can see on the top image the T-point in reality. And to highlight as well, you've been seeing images of the building, and the material choice, the palette of material was also thought about. And British Sugar is an agricultural business, so we wanted to retain that warmth and earthiness of the materials and the colors, but like everything, it requires a balance. So we did add some elements of lighter colors and a few bright colors here and there. So there's always a little something that catches your eye when you're walking around the building. The bottom image then shows you those collaboration and team areas that I was talking about. So it is all flexible furniture. It can all be interchanged as well. This was all set in magnetic timber floor as well. So future-proofing if, if the work practices change, or if British Sugar wants to change them for any reason, you're not fixed to a layout or a type of furniture that can only work in a certain way. So this can always be reconfigured and changed. And it did prove quite useful in the current times. On to the next slide, please. So this again is another two images of, these ones are on the second floor, and on the top one you can see another way. So this is a soft seating where you can have an informal catch up or a quick chat. And you can also see in this image the beautiful views that, and we were very lucky to have that water element there as well. And then on the bottom one, you see the more standard setup of deskings, but that was also essential in the way that British Sugar works. So it was a lovely journey from start to the end. And I think we did take hopefully all the boxes that we set out to in the brief. And I will now pass you on to Ashley so you can have a little glimpse of the M&E strategy. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. So I'm going to talk about the most exciting bit, the M&E strategy, and focus on how we met the client's brief, which was to deliver an uncomplicated system, and a system that was really led with well-being-led principles. So every decision was made on how it would benefit the occupants. So as a team, we looked at a passive house principled approach to the entire building, which for us means making the building fabric and structure, do as much work as possible in terms of achieving comfort, so there's less for the artificial services to do. That makes the building inherently low energy, but it also makes the building more cost effective because the service installation is less intensive. And it also makes the building very flexible because there are less services to move if the function or the layout of the building changes. So we designed the building envelope generally to passive house standards, with the notable exceptions of the air tightness, which was still pretty good at just under 3. And the glazing, because of the amount of glazing we had on the building, passive house levels of double glazing would have tested the triple glazing, sorry, would have tested the budget. So we used very good double glazing with a U value of 1.2 instead. Another key passive house principle is mixed mode ventilation, and delivering openable windows and swathes of fresh air was a key part of the client brief. And that's also a nod towards BCO approach in terms of giving control of ventilation back to the building occupants. So the whole building perimeter has got openable windows which work in tandem with the mechanical ventilation. And we didn't know it at the time, but that also had a benefit in 2020 and is continuing to have a benefit in terms of maximising the opportunity for dilution in the wake of the COVID crisis. So that's worked really well for us. And the final sort of key concept strategy was the facade engineering, as Richard talked about. As Peter said, the client wanted floods of daylight. It was a key requirement, but obviously where you've got the opportunity for lots of daylight, you've also got the potential for an overheating risk. And on 3 facades, we had that potential. So our approach was to look at solar controlled glazing. The solar controlled glass had a G value of 0.38, which means 38% of the heat transmittance is allowed through. And then on top of that, as Richard was discussing, you've got these lovely glass louvres, which provide further potential to give a further G value of 20%. So in combination, those two elements give an overall G value of less than 10%, which means pretty much at the flick of a switch, we can turn 100% glazed wall into a 10% equivalent glazed wall and get rid of that overheating risk. Okay, next slide. So this slide shows the simplicity of the system and how the M&E system integrated with the form and the fabric and the aesthetics of the building. On the second floor here, you can see the passive elements. So we've got the exposed mass and the facade engineering, which minimise the need for cooling. And you've also got the openable windows there, which worked in tandem with the central heat recovery system, which you can see on the top floor plant deck there. That heat recovery system supplies fresh air to each occupied space via the raised access floor. It's then generally transferred through the occupied space and into the atrium space. And the atrium acts as the return air plenum for the entire system. And taking that approach benefited us enormously. Got rid of a lot of the ductwork, which was great for cost and great for aesthetics. It offset the natural stack circulation because we were collecting that air and reintroducing it at low level. And it also provided a collection point for that low grade heat that builds up in the winter. We could bring that back to the heat recovery system and reintroduce it to the occupied spaces. So taking this approach and all these elements in combination really meant that we were minimizing the amount of heating and certainly the amount of cooling that we needed to the building. So the fan coil unit installation was really limited and only limited to central bulkhead areas, which meant that the general aesthetics and the exposed mass principles of the building didn't have to suffer at all. Hopefully you'll see that on the next slide. So some visuals here, you can see the fantastic, the beautiful external facade with the louvres on the top left-hand side. On the bottom left, you can see the minimal amount of fan coil units that were installed. That's actually the south-facing elevation. So where you'd normally expect to see cassette units littered across that facade, they're limited to the internal areas. And then on the big photo, you can see the atrium, which, as Teresa was saying, is the heart of the building, but also serves as a functional purpose for the M&E strategy. Okay, I'm going to hand you back to Peter now, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we delivered this system. Peter?
Thanks, Ashley. I'm going to keep this relatively short. I think you've heard the story a little bit about where we've come from, what we were trying to set out, and Teresa, Richard and Ashley have explained that journey along the way. You won't be surprised to hear from me that actually did it deliver. It delivered probably more than we thought, undoubtedly more than we thought. We knew we could build a building to house 350 people. What we were truly amazed about was the level of attention to detail and the small elements added up to create a building that not just allows us to be a better business, but to enjoy it more and, without a shadow of a doubt, change the culture of our business. And there's some chat, I don't know, about what it's easily said, but going from what I would call a very traditional building, shirt and tie, directors in offices, to actually getting something out where we all collaborated together, where there's an awful lot of communication and flexibility within the building to enable us to do the casual conversations, as well as the formal focused time that Teresa talked about earlier with the meeting rooms. This new spirit of collaboration, and the phrase, the internal walls have come down. We're a sugar business. We store product in silos. The reality is we were a siloed business. Some of our functions and departments just didn't talk to each other previously. I'm pleased to say we're all one big team now. We do communicate a whole lot better and collaborate across those businesses. So it's truly surprised us about what it has delivered, but it's delivered what we thought and a whole lot more. Do the next slide. And then just to cover off a little bit, financially, is it delivering the benefits? We are pleased to say that the M&E design particularly has paid dividends from a sustainability. That's delivering more than we thought. We've redeveloped the old plot of land as well, and that's now got a combination of low-cost affordable housing on it through to a supermarket as well. The net effect of that is we're actually ahead of budget in terms of where we want to be, the net cost over the 10-year period. probably the thing that's astounded us the most is the reaction from not just our own workforce, but people coming to the building. It is now where it was a point when we were slightly embarrassed about the building. We've got a real sense of pride, both in the building, but also in the business. We don't make excuses for when people come to interview now. They tell us, wouldn't it be a fantastic place to work? That alone just makes you feel a whole lot better about the place you work and puts a bit of pride back in our business, and something that probably the overriding effect that we've had and the feedback we have is it's made such a huge impact. We really should have done this a few years ago. Great stuff. Mike, I think there's a video next. So with a bit of luck, you've heard enough about us. Apologies, I'd love to show you around the building. It's not quite the same, but we've created probably about a 10-minute-ish video that gives you something to sort of give you a feel for as you walk around, but also to see some of the people who work in that building. So if we can just go to the next slide, we'll see the video start. Perfect. And again,
so I think there was a growing recognition that the building wasn't working for us. We wanted to change the culture, but through the building as well. So about 5 years ago, we worked out we could actually create a business case selling an inner city office building and moving out a little bit to a space that would work better for us as a building, but still have those commutable routes. So we started to build a business case, and it's some of it's about finances. A lot of it was about just a desire to change some of the ways of working and the culture in our business. We wanted a lot more collaboration, so working together. We recognised that in modern times we need a more flexible business and therefore an office that went with it.
So it was like somebody put a light switch on and we had this bright, beautiful building with a fantastic brew bar with soft furnishings, and everything was just all open, and it just felt really comfortable. You know, the fact that we had our own barista, and people actually started to mix. You know, people were coming down to the restaurant and mixing with each other, and that was really unseen in the other building.
More, it's felt like you were together, or everybody was together as one family, sort of, rather the ABF family, rather than separate companies.
Looking at the way that we've designed the open spacing, for every element of this building has been well thought through and planned, from ongoing maintenance for future proofing across the board.
In the past, the 5 businesses that are in the building all had separate parties, and they'd go to different venues off-site. And last year, this lended itself to having one big party, and that was great because it was good to see everybody actually mixing with each other. It was just the whole space was used. We had cocktail making, we had all sorts of stuff. The whole space was used, and it was just great to see everybody together.
The space is so free. You don't feel you're cramped into a tight office. You've got light, you've got air, you've got a beautiful working environment.
It's just a huge, vast difference. Probably the thing that brings it to life for me is we used to make excuses when people came in. The visitors used to come in, or you were interviewing, and we apologised for the state of the carpet and the walls. And when you come here, it's them telling us what a fantastic place it must be to work. And that sense of pride really sort of resonates not just in the building, but in what people do and the work that they do. So it ripples all the way through everything we do.
Welcome. Here we are at British Sugar and its associated companies' new headquarters in Hampton, Peterborough. And the view behind me is very much the view that visitors get when arriving at this site. British Sugar chose this site after looking at several other sites in this area, and the appeal of this site was the naturalistic setting we were able to create. Although you can't see it terribly well from here, there's an existing belt of trees that we've augmented around the building, and also we were able to create a new access onto the highway here, such that British Sugar could enter directly from the road to their building without going past other buildings, which was great. A key feature of the appearance of this building from the outside are the extremely distinctive glass fins that you see. These surround the upper floor on 3 sides, only the north side does not have them. The fins are there to control solar gain and glare and enable us to have a fully glazed facade for fantastic views out without the need for any internal blinds. The and they create a very distinctive appearance which changes over time and which respond to the light. The fins are electronically controlled and track the sun as it moves around. Clearly there's no sun today, so the fins are fully open, but if it was sunny, the fins on the facade where the sun is shining onto it would be closed, providing the solar shading that's required. We're approaching the building now, walking up gently rising ground. The building's slightly raised, and we'll head off inside. We're here at the weekend, so the building is empty, and as a result of the pandemic, various changes have been made to it. For example, you can see the reception desk has had a glazed screen added to the top half to make it more secure. Let's go on through. This atrium is the heart of the building and the key element in the strategy for engendering collaboration and to make working here a very social thing to do. Whenever I've been here previously, this space has the furniture's been taken out, but there would be soft furnishings throughout, and it would be full of people enjoying a coffee, having a meeting, using the screens you can see in the booths there for Teams meetings and talking to their colleagues, not just in the UK, but across the world. There are a number of international businesses here. Then through in that direction, you can see the cafeteria. That is a large area with huge sliding doors, which can be thrown open in the summer, so you can enjoy access to the landscape outside. And on this side here, you can see a suite of meeting rooms. And what you're seeing here is the fundamental strategy, which is that the ground floor is for collaboration and for social activities, and there are no workstations down here. And as you progress through the building, up the stairs into the more traditional, if you like, office floors above, that theme continues. So around the edge of the atrium are further collaborative spaces. And as you move out to the perimeter of the building, that's where you get the workstations for concentrated work. So there is a whole sequence of working environments, from the workstation by the window to the collaborative areas around the atrium, and then down to this floor where the whole area is given over to collaborative and social activity. And behind me is the stair, which is a great unifying feature and a very dramatic feature of the space. It spans the whole way across from one side to the other, and there's some very serious engineering hidden under there to enable that to happen without it bouncing when people move on it. This stair is the way people move up and down the building. It's there. It makes everyone more visible than they would be if they were using the lifts, and it's part of the strategy for making this building feel lively and busy, even if it's not entirely full, which it does. Whereas in the previous building, it could be completely full and yet feel empty. This one is the other way around. It always feels lively and it always feels busy. Here we are in the ground floor meeting room suite, which we designed along with the interior designers Maury Smith. And it's not simply a corridor with rooms off it. We've created incidental spaces like this, casual breakout from rooms. And the rooms themselves are identified with this beautiful lush timber cladding and these decorative glass screens which provide privacy but not simply manifestation. They have a beauty to them. And so the whole area is very almost luxurious in its nature. And we can go and have a look in one of the rooms now. All the meeting rooms are individual in some way or other and distinctive. They have different furniture, some have different IT solutions, but what they all have is video conferencing like this. British Sugar is and its associated companies are international businesses, and so it's vitally important to have video conferencing available in all of the rooms. And it's proved to be invaluable in these COVID times that they have this, and they're able to communicate effectively across the world and also within the UK now. And I think they found, as lots of companies have, that their costs for travel and things associated with that have dropped immensely this year. That's a positive for them. In terms of the room itself, something that they all have in common is the wonderful fully glazed facade, the views out to the landscaping which runs all the way along this side of the building where the meeting rooms are, and the opening windows so that they can let in fresh air. And a combination of that makes these rooms a really nice place to spend time. British Sugar is a truly British sugar company. It makes its sugar from sugar beet, which is grown in the fields of East Anglia, and it was important to them that in this building we gave some sense of their background in agriculture and British agriculture. So as you can see, the materials we've chosen inside are very warm, very naturalistic, and have a sense of the earth about them. So you have the timber staircase, you have the dark brown cladding on the outside of the stair, you have the timber ceilings, the concrete frame of the building. It's all very naturalistic and a contrast to the outside, which is much more technical in nature, and that's a reflection of the process of making sugar from the front end where the beet is brought from the field and is washed and heated up and cut up to the other end of the process where the refined sugar is finished, and that's much more of a more technical and laboratory-like aspect of the process. So this building is reflective of both. Here we are at the edge of the building, and this is where the workstations are focused. So this would be an area for quiet working, whereas as I said, towards the atrium over there, it's more collaborative working. And when you're here at your desk, you're most appreciative of the nature of the edge of the building, which is of course a tremendously important design aspect. And the things we've been focused on in this area is having maximum daylight, wonderful views, and here you see a great benefit of this site was the views to the lake, and also down below you can see how existing landscape we've reinforced with further landscaping. And you have a control of environment. So some of the key features to point out here are the passive principles that we have in this design of this building. So when you start with the basics of the frame, it's an in situ concrete framed, post-tensioned actually as it happens, and you can see the columns there. So we have a large area of exposed thermal mass in that. Derived out of the client's wish for a well-being focused approach. So here we have great views, great daylighting, access to fresh air, good supply of fresh air from the displacement ventilation system, and also opening windows. So hopefully this will open. If people want more fresh air, they can have it. And these windows are throughout the building. When we set out on this project, British Sugar wanted us to deliver a building that was capable of having a transformative effect on their business. And I think we've done that. We've done it in a sense that because of the sustainability here and the low energy approach that we've taken, it's saved them 50% on their water bills, it's saved them 75% on their electricity bills, it's saved them about £500,000 annually in terms of their running costs. But much more importantly than that, it's had a transformative effect on the business itself as a place to be. When I've been here in recent times, when it's been fully occupied, it's been fantastic how busy it is, how much people are enjoying working here, the sense, I think, everyone I talk to about how it's changed their perception of British Sugar and the other companies, and it has had a truly fantastic transformative effect, and that's very pleasing to see.
I think that looks like the end of the video. Great video. I think there's one little glitch halfway through. So apologies for that, but I think that video really brought the whole building to life, and then just built on the presentation from the team. So many thanks for that. A lot of questions have come in. I think, Richard, you can probably see quite a lot of them on the screen. We may not have time to get through everything, but I think there was quite a bit of a theme coming in from Ben Williamson and Jeff Taylor. So thanks very much for your contributions. I think as ever on these tours, we get quite a lot of questions asking about build costs and methods of procurement, etc. So Jeff had raised a question, could you give a cost? Yeah. What was the cost per metre in terms of construction costs and breakdown? Pass over to you on that, Richard.
Yeah, thanks. So the construction cost was 17 million. That was construction, as I say, and the GIA, gross internal area, is about 72,500 square feet. So it's not, if someone could do the maths on that, I haven't actually done the square metre rate, but I'm sure people can work that out.
And there's also a question about the net to gross efficiency.
So the gross area that I've just given you includes the rooftop plant room, which was quite large. So the net area is significantly less. The net area is about 55,500.
Excluding the roof plant area, then the net to gross would be much closer.
Exactly. Yeah. When it's a plant room like that, you're never quite sure where to catch it, or we weren't at the time. Count it rather.
And then there was a technical question right at the beginning, which we ought to answer. Who were the key subcontractors for the frame, the cladding, and the services? Okay,
the building was built by Bowman and Kirkland, and the M&E services were B&K Services. The cladding, so the subcontractor, I'm afraid I haven't got that name to hand. The supplier was Cornier. It's a Cornier curtain walling system, and the louvres were the client actually purchased those directly themselves, which is quite an interesting procurement choice in China. So they came from a company called North Glass in Beijing. What was it? Yeah.
And that then led us into a question about were the glass louvres tinted or fritted, and then
they're actually they've got a kind of a built-in film, the glass louvres, rather than fritting itself, rather than a fitting per se. It's quite interesting, the effect where as Ashley said, they're very heavily can't remember the word. I mean, they're quite dark, as you can see when you look at them from the outside. But on a bright day, if you're inside the building and you're looking out, it's surprising how little they actually affect the view out, because of the differential lighting. It's surprising. You do actually see out through them pretty well. I mean, the strategy always was that if two facades, say, had the blinds closed, you had an open plan space. So the other two sides, you would have a view out across the open plan space, so you would always have a view. However, as it's turned out, the fact is you can see out the louvres much better than we anticipated, so the view is really there on all four sides.
And then there's a question from Adrian Burton. Did you consider climate change increase in summertime temperatures? I think that probably also goes some. Maybe it sort of leads into a wider question about this issue of having controlled ventilation and then people being able to open windows. And is there or was there any conflict between people being able to open windows on one side of the building and upsetting the balance of the ventilation elsewhere?
Perhaps Ashley, could you cover that one?
Yeah, on both questions, yes. We were just talking before this started actually about the difficulty of convincing certain members of staff to take a partly passive approach to the cooling. So we did a lot of modelling of the building and a lot of future modelling of the building, and we had to prove that the building would work under a number of circumstances. That was all very robust. But the second point about the openable windows working in conjunction with the heat recovery system, I think it's fair to say when we first started designing mixed mode ventilation systems, people generally didn't understand them and were quite worried about when they couldn't open the windows. But over time, over the last sort of 5-6 years or so, what we're finding is that people naturally understand that if it's freezing cold outside and if by opening the window you're introducing a cold draft, they generally understand that that's probably not the best for the energy scenario, and they start to close the windows. And the same starts to happen then in the peak summer months as well. So we find that that's kind of quite self-regulating, really, that the mechanical system provides the background ventilation that's constantly there, it's always there. The openable windows are really just there for, you know, the wealth of issues that affect occupancy comfort that can't really be controlled by one automatic sensor. So it's air movement, it's the feeling of fresh air, it's odors, and this just gives the occupants like a second higher level of control on the ventilation. So for us, the two things do work very well in tandem together.
There's another great couple of questions on acoustics, and I think that people are probably looking at the open atrium and how the atrium and the office areas sort of work together. Any thoughts on how the acoustics were dealt with?
We certainly included quite a bit of sound absorbent material in the design too, and I think we also included, correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, a certain amount of noise, controlled amount of noise from the ventilation system to control the noise.
Yeah. Sorry, Richard. We talked about the transfer of air from the occupied spaces into the atrium space, and all that was made with acoustically lined paths, and all the mechanical systems had acoustically lined air paths in. And then to help with the reverberance issue of the exposed mass, there were a lot of soft furnishing issues, and there were some high level rafts, I think you call them, that Morley designed in as well.
Yeah, perhaps Teresa or Etienne would like to come in about that and the layout as well in terms of acoustics.
Yes, I think it was quite a concern for all reasons. First, because obviously we have a big atrium, then we have glass facade, then we have desks that are hard surfaces. And I think the strategy was where we had, so looking at the floor, we had timber and we had carpet. So where we had the timber, we went for soft furnishings as much as possible. Even the light, the decorative lighting has felt panels in it, so to absorb all that. And then where you go into the desking area, you have carpet. And then at ceiling level, we had a timber raft with acoustic paneling backing it. And then we had also some fins that were suspended. It was quite visible in the video. So there were suspended fins just wrapped around in felt as well. So all that to help with the acoustics in the open plan. And then where you have the exposed concrete soffit, it's towards the periphery where, as we've said several times before, it's the quiet areas of the building. So we felt overall the balance worked out really well in terms of having those kind of buzzing areas and quiet areas, and we used architectural and furniture elements to get to that balance.
We're getting an awful lot of very complimentary comments that are coming in with the questions. I'm conscious that
more out, Mike.
Yeah, we've already hit the 12 o'clock deadline, but there were just a couple if people are happy to bear with us for another minute or two. There was a technical question. People are commenting on the generous floor to ceiling height, but wondered what that was. And I guess it probably changes between different parts of the floor space.
Yeah, we made a deliberate decision to do that. So the floor to floor heights are greater than you would normally expect. I think ground to first is, I think, 4.2 rings a bell. And then at the floors above, it's slightly less than that, I think. So there was definitely a plan to have loftiness as part of the strategy for particularly the ground floor. And of course, the lack of a ceiling and the way the way the ceilings actually work at the upper floor. So around the atrium, they're relatively low, and then they get higher until you actually just expose the concrete soffit of the flat slab at the edge of the building where the windows are, means that you do maximize the effect of loftiness as well as having loftiness.
There was a couple of questions on sort of the response to COVID. I think we probably saw some of the adaptations that have happened during the course of the video, but I think the question was, what provision, what changes are you considering for post-COVID, as hopefully the British Sugar teams return to the office. I don't know whether that's Peter or Richard, really.
Peter, I would think, if you can handle that, if you're able to say anything, Peter.
So a combination of the technology. So some of our meetings, we've got a wider booking system. So we've adapted the technology to allow people access to the building without overcrowding it. So there's an element there. We've done quite a bit of work in trying to design a building that's flexible enough, and you'll see some of the changes. We've taken out some of the infrastructure and some of the soft furnishings. There's remarkably little changes we have to actually try and do. There's some perspex screens gone up, but as soon as lockdown comes out, we're likely to go back into the office in a progressive way. We'll start with about 100 of the 350 people, and we'll manage a rotation to start to bring people back into the building. But the overriding impact and conversations we've had is it feels like a very safe building under COVID. Compared to Tesco's, which is probably about half a mile down the road, I think everyone's reasonably comfortable with coming back into the building. So we're optimistic that it will be warmly welcomed back.
I think probably the final question that I've got time for. So apologies, we've probably missed quite a lot of your questions, so I'm sorry about that, but we are over the time limit. Rob Van Zyl, who was one of the BCO, or he's the chairman of the judging panel, when they came round and did when they were doing the judging, they were particularly impressed with the sustainability credentials. But he does go on in his point. He said one point debated at length, though, was the sustainability of moving from a city centre location, accessible by rail, public transport, etc., to a business park location, where obviously occupants have to drive to, so private car travel is much more important. Has that raised any issues, either at the time or in terms of going forward?
Probably
Peter, perhaps.
The answer is no. The vast majority of our people drove to the old office. It's on the same sort of commuter routes and access through public transport. Similarly, the rail network was equally as accessible. We felt we had to keep the access routes, make it more commutable, but we've encouraged things like car sharing has been one of the things. Electric vehicle points went in as well. So we've gone from about 3 people who had electric vehicles to about 24 now, and that keeps going up and up. So we're continuing to build upon it and optimize it. I think it's fair to say, Mike, but no negative feedback, and if anything, it will continue to drive the sustainability going forward.
I think on that note, we're going to have to draw a line under the questions. As I said, apologies to those questions that we haven't been able to deal with. I hope that the video might have answered a few more following on from the talk, but I think really just to say many thanks to the team, to all of you for presenting this morning. As I said, it's a lot of time and effort that goes into these, so on behalf of everyone listening,